It usually starts small. Maybe your brother brings home a good report card and everyone claps, smiles, and calls him the smart one. Maybe your sister wins a school prize and suddenly she's the golden child. And then there's you. You walk in with your own news. Maybe you drew a picture. Maybe you tried out for a team. Maybe you just wanted to share something that made you proud. And the reaction is different. A sigh, a half smile. Or worse, that phrase every black sheep knows too well. Why can't you be more like them? You laugh it off, but deep down it stings. Not because you wanted to be your brother or your sister, but because you wanted to be seen. And somehow, that's the one thing you never got. As you grow older, the feeling doesn't just disappear. It grows with you. At family gatherings, you start to notice the patterns. Your cousins get bragged about. Who got into college?
Congratulations on your graduation!
Who just landed a good
Let's
job?
eat!
Who's getting married? Your name hardly comes up, unless it's attached to something like, well, you know how they are. You sit there half smiling, pretending the comments don't matter. But inside, you're screaming. Because it's not that you don't have accomplishments. You do. It's just that no one bothers to notice them. No one remembers that you worked 2 jobs last summer to pay for your own books. No one remembers that you stayed up all night helping your little brother with homework. They only remember the times you messed up, the times you stumbled, the times you were different. Teenage years hit like a storm, and for the black sheep of the family, they feel heavier than for anyone else. Suddenly, every choice you make seems like further proof that you'll never measure up. Your siblings might bring home straight A's, while you struggle through math or science. And instead of support, you get the side eyes and whispers. Why can't you be more like your sister? Becomes the soundtrack of your life. At the dinner table, your voice gets drowned out. Every time you try to speak up, you're met with interruptions or dismissive nods. And it stings. Not because you don't have anything worth saying, but because no one seems interested in hearing it. That's when you start pulling away. Your room becomes your safe zone. Music becomes your therapy. And late-night journaling or doodling becomes your outlet. You start building a world where you matter. Because in the family one, you feel invisible. But here's the twist no one tells you. Being the black sheep secretly starts to shape you into someone stronger than anyone realizes. While your siblings get constant validation, you're out here learning how to validate yourself. While they're being spoon-fed approval, you're building resilience brick by brick. You start realizing that the very isolation that hurts you is also giving you something rare: independence of thought. You don't need the family cheerleaders to move forward. You start finding your own fire. When you mess up, you don't crumble, because you're used to picking yourself up with no applause. That becomes your edge. You learn that your worth doesn't need a round of clapping hands. It comes from within. And the funny thing is, the same family that dismisses you starts to notice that stubborn spark they can't quite crush. At first, it's subtle. You're still the outsider, still the one rolling your eyes at the dinner table while everyone else nods along in agreement. But you begin to see the cracks in their perfect picture. Your golden child sibling, the one who never seems to do any wrong, starts stressing over keeping up appearances. They worry about every little slip-up because the pedestal they're on is shaky. But you've never been on that pedestal. You're free. You can make mistakes without the crushing weight of expectations. You can explore paths your family would never approve of because they already expect you to fail. That low bar they set for you becomes your playground. You realize you're not trapped by their rules. You're quietly rewriting them. And while they're busy staying inside the lines,
The rules!
you're learning how to create entirely new ones. That freedom is like oxygen. While your siblings stress about becoming doctors, lawyers, or whatever shiny career makes your parents proud at parties, you get to experiment. You try things that don't fit into the family's mold. Maybe art, maybe music, maybe a business idea that sounds crazy to everyone else. They laugh, they dismiss, they whisper behind your back. But here's the secret. Being the black sheep means you don't need their approval to keep moving. And because you're not shackled by their expectations, you can discover passions they'll never touch. You're not weighed down by the fear of disappointing anyone, because that ship sailed long ago. What feels like rejection at first slowly transforms into liberation. You start realizing that the very thing that makes you different is also the thing that gives you an edge. The courage to follow your own path when everyone else is too afraid to step off, the one laid out for them. What's even crazier is how the role of the black sheep eventually flips. You go from being the problem child to being the one everyone quietly depends on. Because you've seen struggle up close, you know how to handle crisis when it hits the family. When money gets tight, you're the one who finds a creative way to stretch every dollar. When emotions run high, you're the one who knows how to calm things down because you've spent years navigating tension. When your siblings hit walls in their lives, you're the one they call, not because they suddenly see you as perfect, but because they know you'll understand without judging. You've been where they are. You know what it's like to feel misunderstood, overlooked, even unloved. And that makes you the strongest bridge they've got. The black sheep doesn't just survive outside the herd. Sometimes they become the only one who knows how to guide the herd back home when everything falls apart. It usually happens quietly, almost without words. Maybe it's when your mom calls you late at night, not to scold you, but to ask for advice. Or when your dad, who never said, "I'm proud of you," suddenly brags about your success to his friends. Maybe it's when your siblings, the same ones who once rolled their eyes at you, now text you for help with their own kids, their own marriages, their own struggles. It doesn't always come with a dramatic apology or a teary confession. Sometimes it's just a shift in tone. They start listening more. They start respecting the grind you went through. They start realizing that the very qualities that once made you the outsider are the same ones that built your resilience. That's when you know. Being the black sheep wasn't a curse. It was training. And now, even if they never say it out loud, you've earned their silent respect. The turning point often arrives in the most unexpected way. It's not when you've made millions or when your name suddenly carries weight in rooms they'll never enter. Sometimes it's something as small as fixing a broken situation no one else could handle. Maybe your family is in a crisis, financial, emotional, or even something as simple as keeping everyone together at a funeral or wedding when emotions are flying off the rails. And suddenly, all eyes turn to you. The same black sheep who was once called irresponsible, difficult, or different is now the one holding it all together. In that moment, you realize the years of rejection weren't wasted. They carved you into someone strong enough to thrive in the storm. You're not just surviving anymore, you're leading. When you begin turning pain into strength, everything shifts. You stop seeing yourself as the outcast and start seeing yourself as the survivor. The teasing that once broke you now feels like training for resilience. The silence that once haunted you becomes the space where your creativity was born. The rejection that cut the deepest now looks like the doorway that pushed you toward your own path. You realize the very things that made you the black sheep, your questions, your differences, your refusal to blend in, are the things that give you power. Instead of running from your story, you embrace it. You wear it. You let it shine. Because while everyone else stayed in the comfort of conformity, you were forced into growth. And now that growth becomes your advantage. That's when the black sheep often discovers something beautiful. Family doesn't always mean blood. Sometimes it's the friend who picks up the phone at 2 a.m. when you're falling apart. Sometimes it's the mentor who looks you in the eye and says, "You're not crazy, you're gifted." Sometimes it's the stranger who shares your story and suddenly you don't feel so alone. Piece by piece, you begin to build your own tribe, a family stitched together by choice, not obligation. And this family sees you for who you really are. They don't roll their eyes at your ideas. They don't shame you for being different. They applaud it. And in that acceptance, you start to heal. You start to believe that maybe, just maybe, being the black sheep was never a curse, but the path to finding your true home. The turning point usually comes quietly, without fireworks. Maybe it's the day you land a job no one thought you could get. Maybe it's when your little side hustle suddenly pays the bills. Or when you finally publish that book everyone said nobody would read. Maybe it's when the very idea you were mocked for turns into the one thing that changes your life. And in that moment, everything shifts. The family that once dismissed you, the ones who laughed at your dreams, suddenly have nothing to say. The silence is deafening, but it's also sweet, because you realize you don't need their validation anymore. Your success isn't about proving them wrong, it's about proving yourself right. It's the quiet victory of the black sheep, rising, thriving, and becoming everything they said you couldn't be. At first, the family doesn't know how to handle it. They act surprised, as if your wins came out of nowhere, like they weren't watching all the years you spent grinding in silence. Some of them try to play it off. Oh, we always knew you'd do something great. Others stay quiet, unsure of how to admit they doubted you. And then there are those who suddenly want to get close again, reaching out as if they'd been cheering you on the whole time. It's awkward, sometimes even painful to see the shift. But deep down, you recognize it for what it is. Proof that your role as the black sheep gave you the strength to stand alone until you didn't need their approval anymore. Their change of heart doesn't erase the years of being overlooked, but it does highlight the resilience you've built in the shadows. And then it hits you. The true victory was never about winning their approval in the first place. That longing you carried as a kid, the desperate hope that one day they'd see you, value you, embrace you, starts to dissolve. You realize you don't need their applause to validate who you've become. The years of silence, the nights you cried, the mornings you pushed yourself to get up and keep going, all of it shaped you into someone who can stand tall without anyone else's permission. The black sheep identity transforms into something else. It becomes a badge of honor. While they were fitting into expectations, you were breaking them. While they were seeking safety, you were exploring freedom. And that freedom is priceless. You start to see that being the black sheep was never a curse. It was the universe's way of handing you a different script. One where you learn that your worth isn't tied to who claps for you, but to the fact that you kept moving even when no one did. As life unfolds, you notice something unexpected. People who once overlooked you begin to seek your advice. Maybe it's a cousin who always seemed so perfect, but now feels trapped by the weight of the family's expectations. Or a sibling who secretly admires your courage to walk away from the mold. Suddenly your scars become someone else's roadmap. You've lived through the whispers, the labels, the isolation, and because you survived it, you know how to speak life into someone else who feels invisible. The black sheep becomes the shepherd, guiding others who are lost in the shadow of conformity. You don't preach at them, you don't force your path on them. You just exist as proof that it's possible to live free and whole without everyone's approval. And that quiet power, that unshakable authenticity, is something no one can take away. It's then you realize that the very role they tried to shame you into became the gift you now give the world. The courage to be unapologetically yourself. At the end of it all, you realize that being the black sheep was never really a curse. It was a calling. While everyone else was busy performing for approval, you were learning how to breathe in your own skin. While they clung to comfort, you were building resilience. And while they were polishing masks, you were shaping truth. Life might have started with whispers, rejection, or even loneliness, but it led you to a place of authenticity, freedom, and strength. The black sheep is not the outcast. It's the one bold enough to walk a path no one else dared to. And that path, though harder, shines brighter because it's real. So, if you've ever felt like the outsider in your family, remember this. You were never meant to blend in. You were meant to stand out, to break cycles, to start new ones. That is the power of the black sheep. And sometimes, the one who didn't fit in is the only one who truly belongs.